Welcome to A Dose of Feel Good. I'm your host, Whitney Bischoff, and today we are talking about turning the mundane into meaning. You can see full show notes at doseoffeelgood.my.canva.site. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. We are into February already, which seems absolutely insane, and fits beautifully into our topic this week, which is turning the mundane into meaning. And I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but I feel like January and the start of 2026 has just flown by. And I know I hear this a lot, that the older that you get, time just flies. And I feel like that's real, when you are a young pup. I feel like time just went so slow, like I remember like elementary years, honestly, like middle and high school years too. It was like, this cannot go any slower, and just kind of looking forward to adult life. And now that we're in adult life, it's like, really, this is what I was looking forward to. But now I feel like time just goes so fast. But also at the same time, there can be what feels like really slow moments, because it's the same thing day in, day out. And that's what we're talking about, is that like mundane feeling of adult life, of just the same thing over and over again, and how to reconcile with making meaning out of that. And so that's what we're talking about this week, is turning the mundane into meaning, because I really do believe that there's so much meaning in our adult life, whether it's corporate world, the working world, or if you are a stay-at-home full-time mom or dad. I know there's just so much of like just the day-to-day life that asks of us, and there's a lot of meaning in that. And so I think just taking a step back and realizing that our time on this earth is limited, and I think we all realize that, but sometimes it takes a second to really understand and believe that, in the day-to-day life, that our time is limited, and there's only so much time in a year. And I know many of you out there have, maybe heard of the song Seasons of Love from Rent. Again, I'm a Broadway theater girly here, and so I often think back to the song of really that countdown of how many minutes are in a year. And that's real, like even as I record these episodes, they're only 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm like, everyone's got 15 to 20 minutes to spare. And I feel like we do. But then if you really reconcile how many minutes are in a year, they're limited. And what are we doing with our time? And are we really making the most of it? And so I feel like when we start to think of, minute by minute, and each minute that we have, are we making choices that really add meaning and value, or are we stuck on this hamster wheel? We can get stuck on those wheels, right? Whether that is in corporate America, of just so much that's being asked of us, and so we're just stuck on this wheel, or I think sometimes having to fit into all of the things and feeling like we have to be well, right? So that might be like, oh, okay, not only am I working my full-time job or being asked, doing all of the mom things, right? But then also I have to eat well. I have to go to the gym. Oh, and also I better, take care of myself, do, I don't know, all the skincare things I have to, I don't know, right? But then there's also like, when am I going to grocery shop? Or also, I better, take time for myself and socialize. And so there's all of these things of what it means to be well. But we're also creatures of habit and routine. And so we get on these cycles of, I'm doing all of the things. But then it's like, then what am I actually doing? Am I actually living my life? And so when we get on these routines of like, okay, I've got it all figured out, but then it can start to feel like we're in this rut, right? And so the path that we're on, it gets deep, it gets worn, and it's more difficult to see what is the point of doing all of these things. I'm doing the things that make me well, or I'm doing the things that I'm told of, oh, if I do XYZ, then I'm going to make money, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to do whatever society says of if I do XYZ, then I'm going to feel super great. I'm going to have it all figured out. I'm going to have the point, whatever that point means, right? But we then feel just stuck in that rut or that hamster wheel. And I think that's what that mundane feels like, right? Like we're told that's what's going to be the meaning, but it doesn't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. And unfortunately, I can't tell you the meaning of life. I would be rich if I could tell you what the meaning of life is. Unfortunately, I am not the know-all of knowing what that is. But I do think there's so much meaning, even in the small everyday moments that we tend to feel insignificant. And so it's those moments that we maybe sometimes take for granted, or when we talk about the minutes that are up in the year, we can find meaning in those, and it can jump us off of that path, right? That well-worn path that just gets deeper and deeper, and the more that we walk it, it's harder to climb out of, right? But when we recognize those small everyday moments, we can climb out of that, right? It gives us that opportunity to step out of that just for a moment. Or maybe rather than continuing to walk that path, we light a new path, right? And so finding those meaningful moments, it doesn't have to be what everyone has told us that mundane gives us meaning for. And what I mean by that is just the everyday thing. And so I love this. I do this. I get excited about the smallest things. Anyone will tell you that. But I really genuinely have started to appreciate that, you know, I woke up and that has meaning. There are people who go to bed and they don't wake up in the morning, and that's the reality of it. And so I when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, there's meaning then to this day. I don't know what that is, but there is meaning there. It might be, you know, I increased the weight that I'm lifting at the gym. That has meaning to it. Or, you know, I made the conscious decision to choose fruit in the morning instead of a donut. That has meaning, right? Maybe I said hi to a stranger, and that has meaning for them. It might not have had huge meaning for me, although I love saying hi to everyone under the sun. Maybe it's I asked the receptionist at the doctor's office, or, you know, at the car mechanic how their weekend was, and maybe no one had talked to them all day, and that has meaning. Maybe I noticed the coworker who looked upset, and I asked them, you know, are you doing okay? Or, hey, I'm going to check in on you. That has meaning. Maybe it's something as simple as my favorite song came on in the grocery store, and maybe I hummed it. I'm a singer. I would probably sing it. Drives my husband crazy. And maybe I danced to it a little bit in the middle of the grocery store. Maybe I took a picture of myself because I was really feeling good and I didn't really care what anyone thought of it, but I felt it in that moment, and that provided meaning in that moment. Or maybe it's I called my best friend just for a laugh, right? It's all of these small things that give us meaning in what feels like the mundane, right? We don't have to overthink it or make these big, huge gestures, but what we're really showing is that I showed up, right? I showed up for myself. I showed up for the people around me in maybe those moments that feel super, I am just going along the path that everyone else is going on, but I'm finding magical moments that give meaning, right? And I don't think we give enough credit to just showing up, right? That gives so much meaning. And when there's only so much time, when there's only so many minutes, when we're only allocated so much time, even for our lives, that gives meaning when we genuinely show up. And it doesn't, again, have to be these big, huge gestures. And I think how to illustrate this a little bit, a couple of different stories. So first, I want to show this as, I know I've mentioned this, but I was talking with someone recently about, sometimes people deal with some hard medical things, and I'm one of those at the moment. And whenever I mention that to someone and they're like, oh, that seems really difficult, and it is, I don't want to discount that at all. And I think especially when people are dealing with things that, you don't really know what the outcome's going to be. And so there's this almost uncertainty, but also finality. And so it's like, that can be really scary. And so when you're talking with folks, sometimes they're like, that's a scary place to be in. And while yes, it is, I also tend to always say that we aren't promised forever. Meaning that I could get in my car, I could drive down the interstate, and I could get into a car accident and not be here tomorrow. That's just the reality. We're not promised any moment. And so I genuinely want to find meaning in everyday moments because of that reality. And I think we don't realize that, right? We get stuck in these mundane moments that we genuinely believe we have forever, and we just don't. And so finding the value in those meaningful moments has so much impact that often I don't think we realize. I think, at least for me, I illustrate this in what gets me out of bed every morning is this understanding that for me, I genuinely want people to see the potential that they might not see in themselves. That's my genuine motivation. And I know that there are moments to do this, even in the most mundane opportunities in each day. And that gives me meaning and allows me, when we talk about that path, that rut that we tend to feel like we're in, every time I remind myself that that's my meaning, I jump off the path, right? I know I have that opportunity, and when I see that opportunity, I'm like, I'm not going to stay on that well-worn path that everyone else tells me to be on. I'm going to jump right off that path. And I think that understanding that we all have those moments and we all have that drive to jump off that path and find those meaningful moments can be really, really impactful. So if you feel stuck on that wheel of life, I highly recommend take an inventory of those small things that still bring meaning. Is it maybe the people that you're surrounding yourself with? Is it, that genuine purpose that you feel when something happens that sparks something inside of you? Maybe it's your pets. Maybe it's, those cuddles that they give you, that unconditional love that they surround yourself with. Maybe it's a hobby where you can really throw your creative energy into, or maybe it's just something that you're really passionate about that lights that fire inside of you that, whether you talk about it and people tell you, wow, you could talk about that all day long. Those things that genuinely bring you joy throughout your day, find those things and take inventory of, they don't have to be, these big grand things, but those small things that still bring meaning into your everyday life. And when you notice, the mundane, when you get stuck in that place of, why am I doing this? Why am I stuck in this wheel? I want you to just ask yourself, what would happen if you jumped off the path just for a moment? What could happen? I often think we think of worst case scenario, but in this case, what would be that worst case scenario? If you were to jump off that path, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then dream a little. What would be the best thing that could happen if I chose to jump off that path just for a moment and took an opportunity for myself, took a chance on myself of finding those things that really light that fire inside of you? Because the reality is that, life is short, and I don't want you to wait to add meaning to your life. It exists all around you. It exists in those everyday moments, even when you feel stuck in that everyday life that you're like, what is the point of all of this? And really understanding that We should live each day as if it's a gift and an opportunity to really leave our mark, and you have space to leave your mark in, to show up not only for those around you, but really genuinely show up and live your best life. And that's all I really want for y'all. So how do we actually put this into action? So a couple of pieces here. First, really taking a second to reflect. What does your current path look like? Where are you? Are you really kind of stuck in that wheel or that rut or that path that just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and you're kind of on that cycle? Where are you on that path? And what does it currently look like? And then take a second and define your fire, define that spark. Like I said, what excites you enough to jump off that path? If you are deep in that path, what excites you enough? And it might be this big, huge thing. That's okay. But really identify, what would it take to jump off that path? And then the third piece, map out your day, that mundane day, whether, again, it's that corporate life, that working life. Map out what that looks like. And I want you to take a second and define and identify those meaningful moments throughout your typical day. Find those opportunities where there is genuine places of meaning, and celebrate those and identify those and really lean into those moments where there is meaning, especially when it feels like you're just going through the day to day. Because I promise you, there is so much meaning, even in the mundane, and that we all have that opportunity to jump off that path and live our best life, which I just think is super awesome. So that's all that we have today. So thank you for going on that path with me again. We will have a toolkit available on Instagram and on Patreon this Tuesday. So check that out to really put these tools into practice. Also exciting stuff. We will be releasing our stickers to purchase this week on Etsy. So we'll be showing those and previewing those on our Instagram. So check those out. I think they're going to be super cool. We also, again, as always, have some of our fun Dose of Feel Good merch out on Bonfire. So you can see those on our website. The link is in the bio on our Instagram as well. Otherwise, if you have any topic ideas, I always love to hear from y'all. So send me a direct message, or you can submit a story on our website as well. And if you would like to bring Dose of Feel Good to your business, to your campus, to any places near you, always send me a message as well. And I would love to continue to share this in your spaces. Otherwise, have a great week and stay tuned for next week. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are feeling ready to conquer the week and let your impact ripple out to the world around you. Let's connect on Instagram and Threads at Dose of Feel Good Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Until next time, share your own dose of feel good and never underestimate the power of positivity.